You know the scene, right? You picture these rows of perfectly groomed cats, judges looking on super seriously, and then that quiet applause when one of them wins that big blue rosette. It all looks so pristine and elegant, but what you don't see is what happens behind the curtain. It's a whole world of intense debates, high-stakes money, and some surprisingly complicated rules that make the whole thing run.
So who is running the show? Well, it's an organization called the Cat Fanciers Association, or the CFA. And as we're about to see by peeking inside one of their board meetings, being in charge of the purebred cat world is way more complex and, honestly, way more dramatic than you could ever imagine.
So to really get what's going on, we're going to pull back the curtain on 4 key areas. We'll start with the business side of things, because yes, there are some serious pressures there. Then we'll see how they actually govern the rules of the competition. After that, we'll dive into the really passionate stuff, the politics of the cat breeds themselves. And finally, we'll take a look at how science is changing the game for the future.
All right, first up, let's talk about the money. Because even though this whole thing is driven by a passion for cats, the CFA is a business, and they're dealing with real budgets, major corporate sponsors, and some pretty significant financial risks.
And here is a serious reality check. The CFA's biggest, most prestigious event, the World Show, doesn't always make money. We found out from their own board minutes that the 2014 show was actually on track to lose up to $25,000. Yikes! That kind of pressure leads to some very tough conversations.
And those financial pressures? They have real consequences. One board member, Pam Moser, actually made a motion to cancel the 2015 World Show just to stop the bleeding. But then she had to withdraw it. Why? Turns out there was no exit clause in the contract. Canceling would have cost the CFA a whopping $44,000. They were completely locked in.
This really gets to a core tension in the whole organization. See, on one hand, you've got these local clubs, many of them operating on a shoestring, and they desperately need sponsorship money to put on their shows. But on the other hand, the main CFA board has to answer to its big corporate sponsors, and they can't just keep giving money to clubs who don't even provide simple proof they promoted the sponsor, like just snapping a photo. It's that classic tug-of-war between grassroots needs and corporate accountability.
And the CFA is a global operation. The board saw this massive growth in the popularity of cat shows over in China and made a really smart business call. They voted to double the fee for each cat entered in a show there, from $1 to $2, while at the same time, they kept it low in other international areas that were still trying to grow. It's a perfect example of strategic, market-based thinking.
Now, beyond the finances, the board spends a huge amount of time just debating the rules of the competition itself. And we're not talking about minor tweaks here. These decisions can completely change how cat shows are run from the ground up.
Okay, to get this next debate, you have to know about something called the 6x6 show. It's basically a format where 2 different clubs can team up for a weekend. They host 2 separate 6-ring shows, but they do it together to share the cost of the venue, the judges, all that. It was designed to help small clubs that were struggling. But then, a new idea came along that threatened to change everything.
Someone proposed letting a single club license a giant 12-ring show as just one event. But director Dennis Gano saw right through it. He basically said, "Look, I know why they want this. It's a loophole to cut their licensing fees and the money they owe the CFA in half." He argued it totally went against the original spirit of the rule, which was about helping clubs collaborate. The board listened and they voted it down.
You know, sometimes progress just makes old rules obsolete. For years, if you had a kitten, you could get a free temporary registration number, a TRN, to enter it in a show. But the CFA's online system got so fast and efficient, the treasurer basically said, hey, there's no reason people can't get their kittens registered in time now. So the board agreed and voted to get rid of the freebie. Now it costs the standard $15 fee.
Okay, now we are getting to the absolute heart of it all, the cats themselves. The board is the ultimate authority on breed standards. And let me tell you, these discussions get passionate. This is where tradition clashes with genetics and deeply held beliefs go up against cold, hard scientific data.
And this brings us to a huge question that's been making the rounds online, especially recently. Was the Chinese Li Hua cat delisted by the CFA? Well, the meeting minutes show us what was really going on behind the rumors. The breed was not being delisted. What was happening was a routine data-driven review because the breed is in what's called miscellaneous status. It's a totally normal step for any new breed that's trying to get full recognition. In fact, this is the simple chart the board was looking at, just registration numbers over 5 years. The process isn't about emotion or politics, It's just about tracking a breed's development. They're just looking to see if the numbers are steady and growing enough to maybe move it up to championship status. This is the quiet, careful work that goes into managing a breed registry.
Now contrast that very calm review with the absolute firestorm over the British Shorthair. There was a proposal to accept new colors, lilac and chocolate, and the breed's own council rejected it overwhelmingly. Their argument had nothing to do with how the colors looked. It was a dire warning that those colors come from breeding with other types of cats, and they believed doing that would open up a genetic Pandora's box of diseases into their very carefully protected breed.
But here's the other side of the coin. Director George Eigenhauser, who's an attorney, made this powerful plea to the board to move past the fear and emotion. He argued that every single breed needs genetic diversity to stay healthy. He said instead of just banning colors, they should be embracing science, use modern DNA testing, screen for problems, and manage the risks intelligently. Basically, make decisions on evidence, not what he actually called voodoo.
And that plea for a science-based approach? It's the perfect lead-in to our final section. Because the CFA isn't just some old organization stuck in its ways, it's actively grappling with how technology, science, and the modern world are going to shape its future.
A huge piece of that future is a massive upgrade to their DNA testing program. The board was talking about a new platform that could analyze 384 genetic markers. That is a 6-fold increase from their old system. We're talking about a giant leap forward in the power and precision of their genetic testing. And the implications of that are huge. Dr. Roger Brown, a veterinarian on the board, explained that this tech could eventually lead to a full-on breed identity program. It would be a scientific tool to prove a cat's ancestry, which could one day put an end to the exact kind of emotional, political fights the board had just been having.
And the CFA's work goes way beyond the show hall. Their legislative team is constantly on the lookout, fighting laws all over the country that they feel threaten the rights of responsible hobby breeders. Everything from mandatory spay/neuter laws to new USDA rules. For them, this is about protecting the future of the entire hobby.
So, when you put it all together, it's pretty clear the Cat Fanciers Association is so much more than just a cat show. It's a real business dealing with money and risk. It's like a government debating its own laws. It's a community trying to balance its traditions with the health of the animals. And it's an organization that's looking towards science and legal advocacy to make sure it has a future.
All of this incredibly careful and, let's be honest, sometimes tedious work that happens in a boardroom in Ohio, that's what makes those glamorous moments in the show ring possible. And it leaves us with one final thought to chew on. In a hobby that's driven by so much passion, is all this bureaucracy a necessary evil to protect the cats and the sport? Or is it a burden that ends up stifling creativity and progress?